Good afternoon. Goedemiddag. Bonjour. Ten Esteling. Belale Denta. As a cross-cultural communication trainer, most of the time, I start by introducing myself. Sometimes I just say, very short, I'm Zennu, I live in Wageningen, in the Netherlands. And then ask the participant to guess where I'm from, originally. And that's what I hear very often from the Dutch participants or participants with Dutch background. I hear that I am from Suriname, Curaçao, or Indonesia. And from the British participants, I hear that I am from Kenya, Nigeria, or Jamaica. And the French participants, I hear Senegal, Cameroon, or Martinique. Very interesting. We all have preconceived and conditioned ideas based on our cultures and experiences. That's how our brain works, putting people in boxes. Anyhow, what other people think who I am doesn't change really who I really am. And all these different perceptions are also part of my external identities. The question is, are we taking our assumptions for granted and stay with our stereotypes, or are we willing to know that unique individual? My name is Zenebework, Haile Michael. I was born and raised in Ethiopia. The subject I'm going to talk about is cultural diversity and unity in relation to identity. I am born and raised, as I said, in Ethiopia. At home in Ethiopia, we spoke two languages. My parents' ethnic language, Guragenya, and the national language of the country, Amharic or Amharic. As a kid, I went, just like most kids, to school to learn writing and reading Ge'ez, which is the national script. Yeah. And then I went to a French school, an international French school. There I learned French and English too. As a teenage girl, like many youngsters, young Ethiopians, dreamed of going to Western country. I too wanted to go to Switzerland to continue my education. My supportive parents, who have never been outside Ethiopia, accepted my wishes and allowed me to pursue my dream. So, in February 1974, I left Ethiopia and I went to French-speaking Switzerland. At school in Lausanne, I knew nobody knew me. And at a certain point, I felt just like a nobody. Though I spoke French well, I couldn't understand my Swiss classmates. Due to the different cultures and norms and values, I lost my grip. I was disconnected. I felt lonely. At that time, I thought language was the key to understand people and to navigate in a foreign country. But I was wrong. The culture shock was huge. I felt lonely, disconnected, and I didn't know what to do. At home in Ethiopia, I was used to do things together, to study together, to cook together, to eat together. So, another culture, for me, it was really difficult to adjust. And soon, I discovered that I was Black. It was not in a bad way, or I didn't feel discriminated at that time. But the concept of being Black was really unknown to me till that time. This may sound strange nowadays, but I have to explain this a little bit. Ethiopia is the only country in Africa which has never been colonized. Because of this, it has been able to keep its own distinctive and authentic culture, like the script, the many languages, the calendar, among which the many traditions too, like the old Jewish, Christian, and also Muslim cultures. 50 years ago, Ethiopia had a very hierarchic and feudal system. The social classes mattered, but the color of skin was not of importance. To my knowledge, the human skin has never been called black nor white. And being black, I say now black, I don't call these words actually, having a dark skin was not considered as negative. Having a dark skin was beauty. I remember the many songs which describe this. One of them goes like this. Ayim asamesai yewibdar wibitu. Ayim asamesai wibitu. This can be translated as the lady with the dark, shiny skin. She is a beauty, beauty, beauty. At that time, people put oil, natural oil, bought butter to shine. But nowadays, we put powder. Anyhow, to come back to my color question, this categorization of human beings by color, black, white, yellow, red, has been introduced once, centuries ago, into our world. Why we, at this time, in the 21st century, still using these terms, which are still dividing us? To come back to my story, I was still in Switzerland, still young, curious and adventurous. I left Switzerland and went to the Netherlands, where I knew some Ethiopian friends. Another language, another culture. Anyhow, I decided to stay there. I decided to settle there. So, anyhow, I learned the language, I completed my studies, and I became optometrist. Years later, I married a Dutchman, had 2 children. I became wife and mother too. And I was dealing with the daily hectic life, the daily hectic situation of being a mother, like just most parents. At that time, to find a balance between home, kids, work, and husband, I was completely absorbed in it. At the most difficult moment of my life, when I didn't know how to guide my adolescent children, I happened to be chosen as a role model of the integration policy in the town where I live. My pictures, among others, were posted in different locations as a success story of integration in a society. Of course, on the surface, I was an ideal immigrant, a non-Western immigrant, an allochtone, which means a non-native, who spoke the language, worked, participated in community activities and voluntary works. But from the inside, I was stuck between cultures. At that time, I felt disconnected. I was stuck between cultures, and I started questioning, what does this integration policy mean? Am I really integrated, as they say? Gradually, I started developing a very strong feeling. A strong feeling like a kind of urge, an urge to go back to my roots. So I decided to go back to Ethiopia. This time, not for a short vacation, but for a longer time of 1 year. My goal was to reconnect with my culture and to catch up on everything I had missed from my family and my home country. On my arrival, I found out that everything was different from what I knew and expected. I didn't feel at home in Ethiopia. I felt a foreigner. It was a crisis. Though I speak the language well, I couldn't understand my family, let alone the Ethiopian society. I felt a gap, just like Switzerland. I felt a gap between me and my family, whom I longed to be with. I felt disconnected from them, despite being physically with them. After a couple of months, I started missing the Netherlands. The fundament of my identity started to crumble. I lost my sense of belonging, nor in Ethiopia, nor in the Netherlands. 1 year later, I returned to the Netherlands, more confused than ever. My home was no longer my home. I didn't feel at home there, nor there. I was in an identity crisis and full of questions. Who am I? Where is home? Try to find answers to my questions. I took different courses on perceptions, cognition, and communications, and also, especially, the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy helped me to examine myself and to be self-reflective. I was criticizing very often the Dutch culture as being too much individualistic and egoistic. I was also criticizing the Ethiopian culture for not giving space, for being too much controlling, and not giving space to individual ideas and behaviors. Now, I was aware of my cultural blind spots, like my stereotypes and my prejudices. I was also able to understand the cultural differences between the Dutch culture and the Ethiopian culture. So, the love-hate relationship I had with my home countries turned into a love story, which led to establishing an eye screening project in Ethiopia, and in the Netherlands, I became involved in diversity and inclusion issues. Now I was able to discover the mix in me, the diversity within me, and my multiple identities. From the inside and from the outside. I feel really happy and proud when I say I am an African, an Ethiopian Dutch, I am an African, an Ethiopian Dutch, a senior citizen, wife, mother, sister, friend, trainer, and mediator. These are some of my social faces, my external identities. My inner me, my internal identity, such as my feelings, my perceptions, my personalities, my views, are also culturally mixed product of my life experiences. I am convinced that this lesson applies also to societies. Diversity is found in every society, in every group, within one family, and also within one person, in every one of us, though we are not most of the time aware of it. I learned that from my experience that integration in a society is not only a matter of speaking the language, of have a job, or a success. Integration in a society is be able to participate in the society without losing part of one's identity. It's about embracing and including the whole personal identity, the external and the internal. I believe that in order to recognize and appreciate the diversity in a society, we first have to recognize, appreciate, and embrace diversity within ourselves, the external and the internal, the whole identity, without being afraid or ashamed. Your race, ethnicity, sexual choices, everything who you are, you have to embrace. If we embrace that and appreciate that, if you love ourselves, we can appreciate the others. So I say this because unity starts within the individual, as does the change. So we have to first to start within ourselves. So we need to cultivate a culture of dialogue, not a culture of discussion. We need to listen more and to talk less. That's what dialogue is all about. We need to be more curious and ask more questions to be able to understand, not to criticize or to give advices. That's what dialogue is all about. I hope that the world will appreciate and recognize diversity as the true sustainable world and the way to diversity. So let us teach our children at home and at school compassionate communication so that they know themselves, respect themselves, and the world around them. Thank you. Amasaganada.